He's so large, he's like a great river. You remain in awe of it.
That's what I'm talking about. He was a blind black Beethoven.
There's no one who touched the whole of the United States of America the way Ray did it.
He's the ultimate example of the American dream.
Ray Charles wasn't just this guy who appears at inaugurations. He had this really interesting and somewhat edgy life.
You got that right.
The only time Ray used to get blind was when some pretty girls came around. That is true, man. He started bumping into walls and stuff and on everything else.
Well, Ray Charles was no saint, and he knew it. But he represents everything that America is. Brashly talented, irreverent.
Columbus might have discovered America, but Ray Charles made America discover itself.
People have called me a cornerstone and a legend and a genius and all those wonderful things, and I appreciate that. But I know that ain't true. That ain't what's happening. I just have to be a guy that can do a lot of things musically well. My bonnet lies over the ocean. My bonnet lies over the sea.
Americans tend to take their icons and flatten them out. And his greatness was much more idiosyncratic than that, coming out of, his own vision, literally, of what he could be.
A portrait of Ray Charles America is a collection of snapshots, of motion and music, of pain and perseverance. Together, these images create a picture of a man who lived the American dream by rewriting it.
So the tour starts here. As you can see on the sign, it's the RPM International Building. The building was built in 1964. It opened in 1965.
If you saw the way he approached his day-to-day life, you would understand why he made such an impact on culture and music.
The building is a rectangle of hallways. So he would never hit a dead end, and he always knew where everything was.
If you go to his recording studio, there are no windows. And that's because they told him it would be a lot cheaper to build a building without any windows. And of course, what does he need the windows for?
He didn't really care much for convention and didn't really respect convention very much and didn't put up the veneer of being conventional. And quite amazing space to go into because it's like his own museum of himself.
One of the most favorite rooms of the building, if not the most favorite for a lot of people, is the wardrobe room. And this room is set up very structured. Every suit is numbered. And you'll see this one was number 14. Even numbers went with black shoes, and odd numbers went with brown shoes. What's even more interesting is that if you asked Ray Charles what suit number 14 liked, he would describe it to you to a T. And I said to him one time, well, how do you know what that looks like? How do you remember? And he said, Tony, I remember the piano parts and the words to 2,000 songs. I think I could remember what 100 suits look like.
Ray couldn't see the world with his eyes, so he mapped out what he needed of the world in his mind.
Everything he did was a vision in his own mind. He had a disability that he turned into a super ability.
life was a jazz riff, and his musical life was certainly like a jazz riff that went wherever he felt it needed to go.
In many ways, I think about Ray Charles that way. He didn't learn what he couldn't do. And he offset eyesight with insight.
I played chess with Ray Charles, and I never beat him. I played dominoes with him, and I never beat him.
What really attracted me to chess is that there is no luck in chess. Either you outthink the guy or he outthinks you. I'll move my queen. All right now, that's what I like.
He lived life that way. They thought several steps ahead.
His motto was, I can do anything you can do. I just have to look at another way of doing it.
He loved the Playboy magazine. He was somebody who truly, you know, read it for the articles.
Say, the Federal Aeronautics Administration, they want to clear this up. Is it that you do or do not fly an airplane?
I mean, do I really have to answer that?
Well, there's a rumor that you know how to fly an airplane.
Oh, now that's better.
Yeah.
Now, you see, there's a difference in what I do and what I know. So
And I used to tell him all the time, you're being blind for the people, but I know you can see.
This is the control room in the studio. Ray Charles spent more time in this control room than in any other room in any other building in the world.
He was listening to sounds inside of himself that maybe no one had ever heard. And that's a gift.
He proved that he was not disabled, that he did understand beauty and was able to relay it to other people who had the sense that he did not.
He can see better than all of us. I think God leaves his hand on some people's shoulders a little bit longer than the other ones.
And I think everything comes out of his ability as a young person to learn how to negotiate the world as a little blind boy and to live a life that didn't limit him because of his disabilities or his race. Then that becomes part of who you are as an individual on a day-to-day basis. That's who I am as a businessman. That's who I am as an artist.
I love music all my life. It's like my breathing. So, you know, it comes easy to me, just like your breathing comes easy to you.
His life experiences, to give you an example, I will never forget, when I first went to Germany with him, he pulled out this arrangement of Yesterday. And right before you see the melody, Yesterday, there was this thing that says, Ray plays the piano, wait. So I thought, gee, I wonder what he's going to play, you know? And he started to play this beautiful German melody. It was Kindersong by Schumann. And the audience went nuts. And then I asked him later, where did you learn that? And he went, it was at the St. Augustine School for the Blind. I realized then, my God, he's all over his music. His life experiences are everywhere.
When I got misery. I was born in the South, and ever since I can remember, there was always music around me. If the music is in your soul, in your body, you can go through some tough times.
Where can you be? Not even Ray Charles knew the exact date of his birth, but his hardscrabble upbringing at the height of the Great Depression informed everything that was to come.
Honey, honey. And if you look at Ray Charles, I mean, his struggles started early. And for him to be able to endure the things he endured as a human being, being in the South during the Jim Crow days.
Just to be where you had the railroad separated the people. You know about the railroad track, come on. I want you near.
As a baby, Ray's father left to work on the railroad.
We're apart.
Ray's mom, barely a teenager, scraped by in spite of her poor health.
When I was about 5, I started to lose my sight, and I knew I was going to go blind. Hey, at that age, you just deal. My mom was very, very conscientious. I mean, she saved me from a lot of trauma that I probably would have had because she knew I was going to lose my sight, so she started preparing me for that.
She told him that you might be blind, but you're not stupid. And she taught him everything that she thought he would need to know to make it on his own.
Well, you are my sunshine. You are my sunshine. Oh, my only sunshine. I know you're gonna make me happy. That's kind of great. I know you never know how much I love you. That's why I don't want you to take my sunshine away.
He went to a school for the blind. The state of Florida did come through with a great education, which is an amazingly important thing. I mean, Ray Charles is an educated guy. He learned to read, he learned to write, he learned to play Chopin. And his education made him who he was.
Ray was educated. The average black musician, blind or sighted, was not. I'm not. And he didn't mind letting you know that he was blind, but he wasn't dumb. He would let you know that in a minute.
He was quite a prankster. I remember an incident. James Kendrick wanted to use the piano. Ray had been practicing. Finally, Ray said, "Okay, I'll give you the piano." Well, Jim should have suspected something. Ray had taken all 88 keys off the piano, left Jimmy with the bare, naked piano.
Oh, you are my sunshine. Oh, my only sunshine. I know you're gonna make me happy. That's kind of great.
Ray was a born musician. Ray could sit down and play anything on the piano.
Normally, when you say, if you were going to play music, you would put the music in front of you, and as you see it, you play it. With Braille music, it's not done that way. What you have to do, you have to read so many bars, depending on how good your memory is, and of course your memory becomes better and better as you practice. That's the only way you can literally play it. You got to read it first, and then play it.
Sunshine away.
I met Ray Charles when I was about 7, I guess. All I remember was getting to sing Hit the Road Jack with him. It's just all A minor, G major, E7. I didn't even say Mr. Charles. I just jumped in with, "Hey, Ray." And that was awesome.
When he would come home for his summer breaks, boy, that's everybody would love to hear him play. Just grab him and find a piano and he would just play.
He told me about Mr. Pittman, who lived next door or in a sort of a cafe in their neighborhood, and he'd sneak in there.
What I really enjoyed was when he would sit down at this old piano and start to play it. That always got my attention.
I got loving, baby, to come home. He did ingest the diverse culture of hillbilly music and country blues and gospel.
If money did my talking, I couldn't breathe inside. My baby's love is one thing, even money can't buy. Ain't that fine? I want to tell you that's fine.
You know, his ears were his influences. Whatever he heard, he was all about. We're here, let's listen.
Ain't that fine?
I love good music. I'm kind of like Duke Ellington said, ain't but two kinds of music, that's good and bad. If it's good, it's good. I mean, Beethoven and Rachmaninoff, and they've proven that. They've been dead for 100 years.
We refer to him as the genius because the genius really is just someone who's been able to take the things from their childhood and carry them and maintain them and keep them and you know, keep the magic and keep the magic in there.
Listen to these, some of the songs he recorded at 18, 19 years old. That sounds like a 50-year-old man is singing them. The truth is that by the time Ray was 19, he had overcome obstacles that most 50-year-old men hadn't even had to overcome yet.
My mother told me before she passed away, said, son, when I'm gone, don't forget to pray, 'cause there'll be hard times. Hard times, oh yeah, yeah. Who knows better than I?
Remember, my mom passed when I was 15, 14 and a half, so it was nobody but me.
Just what she meant.
When my mom passed away, I had a terrible time. I couldn't cry, and I stopped eating. I mean, I was just wasting away.
Hard times.
Ray would like you to think that he was just simply invincible and everything rolled off his back and he just kept going. But in truth, the more you got to know Ray, you knew much more the depth of how things that happened in his life did in fact affect him.
I had a woman, Lord, who was always around. But when I lost my money, then she put me down, talking about hard times. You know those hard, yeah, Lord, who knows better than I?
You want to lose a battle when you surrender your spirit. Singing suggests that's power.
Ray certainly exemplifies that. No one leaves this planet unscathed, but what we do with it and how we grow through it and what becomes of us as a result is really what makes all the difference.
A group of us was sitting outside a workshop where we made brooms and stuff. Ray came over. Well, called to tell you guys goodbye. We said, oh, Ray, cut it out. He said, no, I'm going home.
And because I think of the training that his mother gave him, he said, I know I was not born to make belts and seats for chairs. I can do more than that.
My mom, at least thank God she instilled in me that you got to find a way. You got to find a way to make it work for you.
Someone once wrote, we are set down in a going world. And the wonder is that any of us grow up to be sitting anywhere talking. And especially to have that genius locked up in all of that, needing to get out.
I think the big moment of his life was when he came out of that trauma and hit the road. And that's where he remained for the rest of his life.
That's it. Have you ever thought of doing something like this?
Two or three words that he erased from his vocabulary. Never, I can't, and no.
It takes a certain kind of bravery, you know, to step out in the world and not be able to see.
When I went to Seattle, I didn't know anybody there. I went there, and after I slept all day for 24 hours, I went to this club, and they were having a talent night. And the guy didn't want to let me in the club because he said I was too young, and I begged and pleaded, because it's like 1 o'clock at night, you know. So finally he said, all right, kid, all right, come on in, come on, I'll let you. You go on the last one, you go on, you be the last one, you go on. And I was the last guy going, and I got a job just like that.
Ray seemed like a real adult guy by the time he was 17, 18 years old, running around, arranging and composing music and having his own band.
Seattle was a city as far removed from Jim Crow as was possible in post-war America. There he found a thriving jazz culture full of recent transplants, such as a teenage Quincy Jones.
I met him the first time at the Elks Club. All the musicians just embraced him just like a long-lost brother, you know. He set it on fire.
Let's have some fun. You only live but once, and when you're dead, you're done. So let the good time roll. I said let the good time roll. Yeah, don't get me young or old. Gonna get together, let the good time roll.
His first instinct was he needed to be successful as a musician, because if he wasn't, he'd end up back in Florida making brooms or retreading tires.
If you're a promoter and you want to book a concert, I can fit in just about anything that you book.
We would play a white club where we had to play certain kind of numbers in that club. So we would learn things like Old Ace in the Hole and Poor Butterfly, things like that, because that's what they wanted to hear.
I saw Ray some night playing Claire de Lune. You know, he had to play everything in Seattle.
In people's perception. You get one genre, and that's all you're allowed to do. But for him, music was one, you know? That's why he sang jazz. That's why he sang with the big band. That's why he did country. That's why he did all kinds of music, to show that it's one thing.
A passport to adventure in all areas of the world. Because he's done it all, except he doesn't sing opera, but he probably could.
Hey, y'all, tell everybody, Ray Charles in town. Got $1 a quarter and I'm just ran the clock. But don't let no female play me cheap. I got 50 cents more than I'm gonna keep. So let the good time roll.
Ray was nothing if not bold. You know, when you grew up poor and black and orphan and all of those things, what do you got to lose by trying all kinds of things?
Get yourself under control.
There was a guy out in L.A. called Jack Lauderdale, had 2 labels, Downbeat and Swing Time, and then Jack was the first guy who gave Ray a recording deal.
There's no way I can tell you the feeling that you get when you hear your creativity come back to you.
I'll take you strolling down Lover's Lane. I come to see you even in the rain. I'll do anything for you but work.
He was known then as the blind singer. Without the real appreciation of his musical depth at that time, but the blind singer.
I'll do anything for you.
He sang like Charles Brown and Nat Cole.
I was scared to go out and be myself because I could get jobs sounding like Nat King Cole. I could get hired in clubs, you know.
They were making records that sell. I want to make records that sell. I need to make records like the people who are making hit records. I want to have a big band and travel America.
Those days when it was cold, those times when it was segregated, those times when there was no place to go and eat unless you had some friends in the town, no place to stay unless you had friends in town.
After World War II, Life magazine ran this contest that said everybody should write in what you would do if you captured Hitler. And a woman won with her entry, put him in a black skin and set him free in America. Even though we were feeling like we had liberated Europe, right here in our own country, there was extreme racism going on. And we needed to look at that now.
The problem was not so much the places you played in, because most of the places you played in were black anyway, but it was the getting there.
This is where the blindness might have been a benefit in terms of negotiating Jim Crow America. Than the blind boy.
Ray got away with a lot of things when we think in terms of segregation because he was blind. I've known times that Ray was able to go in hotels and they let him stay when they didn't let us.
Behind that wonderful smile and behind that kind of aw shucks, aw gee type of personality, he was a very shrewd individual.
And I think part of his motivation was to disprove the mythology of racism that told him, you know, he couldn't when he could, and he did.
When your lover is not around.
Wow. 2 years of one-night stands may have shown Ray that he could make a living at music, but without a hit record, he would never be more than a sideman.
His big issue commercially was who was Ray Charles. He was almost too versatile for his own good.
Woo! Well, don't you know, baby? Child, don't you know, baby? Don't you know, baby? Little girl, don't you know? Please listen to me, baby. Girl, I'm in love with you so.
At a certain point, you have to express who you are. It's only one you. It's only one Ray Charles that existed in this world. So Jamie Foxx did a good job. Like, for him to just express that is really showing that American philosophy of like, hey, I am who I am. I know who I am. I love who I am. And I'm gonna be that.
I'm in love with you so.
He created a space for someone who could be themselves. And the more individual and idiosyncratic he was in his choices, the more successful he was.
He was going nowhere after making several sides for Swing Time. And yet he attracted the attention at the fledgling Atlantic label, and they grabbed him.
Atlantic was one of the greatest black music labels ever. And what Atlantic Records and all these labels were doing was marketing music to black consumers.
Ahmet Ertegun bought his contract from Swing Time Music. We believed in building artists, people with real voices, not just people who could scratch out a song they had written and maybe have a quick hit and then disappear from the scene.
I made about 4 records that didn't do nothing. I remember going and talking to Jerry Wexler one day, and I said, you know, Jerry, I've been over here, man, and I haven't come up with no kind of hit. He said, well, don't worry about no hits. You just keep making the music. The hits will come.
So there was a moment of epiphany where Ray understood that Ray had to cry out, here I am, here I am. I'm willing to take a chance that you will like my voice.
Whoa, sometime.
In searching for a sound, Ray Charles only had to search inside of himself. The music that came out not only stirred the spirit, it revolutionized music. It was called soul.
It's only because I got a good, yeah. I got a woman to be, yeah. She's my babe, don't understand now. Oh Lord, love a man. I got a woman over town that's good to me.
Yes, I have.
We were saying, yeah. Yeah, hallelujah. Because it was just stunning.
He's a pioneer. He's an absolute genius. Now, I Got a Woman. Took the sounds of gospel music and mixed it together with blues lyrics.
God's music with the devil's words, you might say. It caused a ruckus.
The chords were church chords. But the words coming out of the singer's mouth had nothing to do with Jesus. And I said, oh, this is sacrilegious.
I have to straighten you. I didn't use gospel. See, that's where people make a mistake. I never used anything. I just started being myself. And it sounded that way. You understand where I'm coming from?
Didn't bother Brother Ray. That's what he did. And nobody did it like he did.
In certain genres, you're not, at that time, really privileged to bend. But breaking through that and creating a genre, it's big.
Ray seemed to be the perfect person to combine blues and gospel because he was a believer in a certain sense, but he wasn't afraid of God.
And yet he never forgot God because you heard it in his music.
Make me feel, yeah. Wait a minute. I got a woman, I want to tell you.
As musicians often do, he was pushing the limits.
What I want.
It became an acquired taste.
Have you ever heard of the devil making anything good and beautiful?
First record I remember hearing him was What Did I Say? And in fact, I was sitting in Tucumcari, New Mexico as a guest disc jockey, playing it all the time, and then started listening to all this stuff.
Rock and roll and Ray Charles are all kind of products of that remarkable, incredibly creative era. I mean, talking post-World War II, it's around 1954. Rock and roll, for my definition, is black music, you know, by white people in the style of black musicians. It's not sweetened, it's not made poppy. Ray is there at the same time as all these other musicians are, playing black music by black people, for black people. White people are coming along for the ride.
Ray Charles and his band at Newport, I Believe.
Ray Charles becomes and is an individual. God breaks the mold.
One of these days, and it won't be long, you gonna look for me and I'll be gone. I said I believe on God. I believe, yes, I believe. Oh, and I believe now. I believe, yes, I believe. Oh, you know I believe to my soul, yeah. Trying to make a fool of me, yeah.
That kind of why not feeling of his, that I am black, I am who I am, I'm a gospel guy, I'm a blues guy, I'm a rhythm and blues guy, I'm a jazz guy, I'm going to do what the hell I want to do when I want to do it. It comes at a time when America is beginning to reward African Americans expressing their African Americanism.
The changes that were going on in the country at that time were phenomenal. The 50s and 60s, a time of great societal revolution. And one of the things that propelled it, but also helped to ameliorate it, was music.
It's the connection of, we're just people.
You can really sing a song so that the public believes that this has actually happened to you, because you got so much realism in your singing, in your sound.
Ray Charles' life informed his music, gave it a depth, made it a sort of a pure and intense thing.
The pain and pathos of it is in his voice. So he could be very, very warm. He could be very, very sexual. He could be very, very funny. He could be very, very sad. And That's him.
Oh, yes, I do now.
That's the spirit. You know, you can't touch it. It touches you.
Last night you were dreaming and I heard you say, when you know my name is Ray, that's why I believe in God.
At the end of the 1950s, Ray Charles' contract with Atlantic Records ended. He surprised everyone by signing to the most mainstream of white record labels, ABC.
For him to go to a place that was associated with white folks, within the world of the record business, was major. All black artists of that era wanted a white audience. The issue is always how do you get the white audience, and that's where all the tension comes in.
Hey, good looking. What you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
Hey! You know, if you break it down from a musician's point of view anyway, you will discover that it's very similar to the blues. You have maybe 3 different chords or something like that. And the lyrics are pretty straight ahead. Like a guy said, I missed you last night, baby, and I went out and got drunk. I mean, that's straight ahead. You can't miss what he's talking about.
Ray Charles' modern sounds in country and western. It seemed radical from a racial dynamic. That is, this black man singing white man's music.
That was unheard of.
His venture into country music is sort of historic, because everybody thought, well, this is not gonna work.
Ray was trying to reach everybody, and that's what the establishment doesn't understand. Ray didn't believe that the American people were in generic categories, as the establishment, I think, has believed for years.
And the genius of it was that it actually worked as an artistic statement and as a commercial statement.
Yeah. Hey,
every baby can see, but I'm busting.
My cotton is down to $1/4 pound and I'm busted.
I got a cow that will drive and a hen that will lay.
Got a big stack of bills that get bigger each day. The county will haul my belongings away. I'm busted. Yeah.
Well, I went to my brother to ask for a loan cause I was busted.
Yeah. And I hate to beg like a dog for a bone, but I'm busted.
But listen, John, where he going? My brother said there ain't a thing I can do.
My wife and my kids, they're all down with the flu. And I was just thinking about calling on you.
Cause I'm busted. Oh, John, I need some money. As a matter of fact, I'll need your last name now.
Country and Western idea really made him a huge pop star.
It's a burning thing. Oh, yes it is.
The irony is that not only did he embrace the country market and conquer the country market, he helped the country market by widening.
He woke Nashville up. That tickled me. He went back, he showed them country boys how they should be singing, I can tell you that.
Now you've got guys that are in the Ku Klux Klan that are listening to I Can't Stop Loving You, and they're liking what they're hearing.
He caused country music to leap ahead, a quantum leap, 50 years maybe, because it would have taken at least that long to reach that many additional people.
But Ray's music and Ray's ear and Ray's ambition opened the door.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, down, down. Said, whoa, the flame went higher. And it burns, burns, burns. The rain
ring of fire, your ring of fire.
He just broke all the rules and made it his own.
It sounded country, but yet it had those elements that he would throw in of jazz and folk and blues and funk. It was essentially Ray doing these different styles of music.
Well, he's rural and he's urban. He's urban.
Johnny Cash's wife was just so excited. She said, I never thought my song could sound like that. But that was the Ray Charles flavor.
Burns, 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 a ring of fire, your ring of fire. Burns, 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 a ring of fire, that ring of fire. Burns, 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 the ring of fire, your ring of fire. Burns. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy on me.
You look at him now as this beloved figure, but Ray Charles became a role model by not wanting to be a role model. Because nothing he did in his personal life made him role model candidacy, but everything he did in his professional life did.
He's a human being that had his failings and he had his strengths, and as is the case with many celebrities, that they're both well known.
He used to say, I have had my fun. If I don't get well no more. Okay?
Somebody wrong, Lord have mercy.
It was going to be more fun in the other place than it would be in heaven. I said, I don't know. I wouldn't take that chance if I were you.
He had a love for a lot of things that would be considered illegal and indecent and so on.
And then they say it's a spectacular circus on the road, and all musicians are great swingers, as we know.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, do we?
I don't know. I always hear this.
Well, I figured that in my younger days, I had to find out many things, you know, so I'm sorry to interrupt you like that, but I had to get what I had to get, you know what I mean? Anyway, I want y'all to know that it wasn't totally my fault in the first place. I realized I came home pretty late the other night. How late it was? Well, I came home, it must have been about 1:30 or something. All right, guys, so it was 3 o'clock. Jesus, I don't understand. In any case, I don't know what she meant talking about.
He was a dope shooting, gambling, womanizing dude, but he didn't lie about who he was.
For a while, he toyed with the idea of having a kind of Ozzie and Harriet, white picket fence all-American family.
Della and the 3 boys, and that was the family, and that was kind of sacrosanct and protected.
But that didn't last. There were other women, other children.
He liked women, so he had his women.
That's right.
I didn't look for trouble. I wouldn't find it.
I'm gonna tell you, friends, I got the shock of my life. But what I mean by that is my own woman's voice saying to me,
Hit the road, Jack. Don't come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more.
I didn't quite
He was hooked on the road.
It's in your blood, you know. We've been doing it since 12 and 13 years old. If you stop, I think it would be dangerous.
There are people who, if they're not on that road, if they're not performing, they are nothing to themselves.
The deal about the road, which worked so well for Ray, you're always moving. You're always one step ahead of your responsibilities. You're always where you're going to be, as opposed to where you are.
Hit the road, Jack.
He was always on his way. And I think being on his way was what Ray Charles was all about.
Baby, listen, baby, don't treat me this way. I'll be back on my feet someday. I don't care if you do, cause it's understood. You ain't got no money, you just ain't no good. Well, I guess if you say so, I'm gonna have to pack my things and go.
That's right, hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. Hit the road, Jack.
Certainly, there's been penalties that have been paid in terms of public exposure, as well as the law trying to chase them down, particularly drugs.
I don't have to take that kind of talk from nobody. They say what?
Don't you come back.
After all I've done for you, you want?
It takes a certain kind of determination to say, well, I'm going to revel in my drug use, no matter what the consequences.
What is going to sensationalize what you're writing about? Women or drugs or something? I don't give a damn what they write. As long as you spell my name right.
He refused to compromise, even when it was really hurting him, hurt his career.
On Halloween 1964, Ray's luck finally ran out when the feds arrested him for drug possession. He was facing 40 years hard time.
Don't set me free. Don't set me free.
Do you condone drug taking yourself?
Well, yeah, I always figure that what I do is what I do, but it doesn't mean that I recommend it for other people, you see. It's just like, for instance, I may drink scotch, but I don't go around telling everybody else they ought to do it.
Do you think drug taking among entertainers helps the fans that follow them, that idolize them?
No, I'm sorry about that, because I think that the kids who idolize these people certainly might feel that, well, that they want to be like this person, and it's certainly not good. No, I don't think that's right at all.
I believe Ray was probably one of the saddest people that I ever knew. And yet his exterior was very jolly, and, you know, the contradictions were very much that, you know, the small boy Ray who just needed love. He did. That was the crux of his always reaching out, of his always, he couldn't help it, you know? He had a hole in his spirit, in his heart, somewhere.
Ray Charles knew how to communicate with us, but in reality, Ray Charles was alone in the dark.
The solitude of being Ray Charles, having lost so many people close to him early on in his life, I think it was about needing closeness.
If I had any regrets, I think that would be it. I really regret the fact that my mother didn't have the chance to see me become where I am today.
On my knees I pray.
That was his sadness, you know, that people left. What he filled that hole with was music. And probably women.
Baby, can't you see? Now till I can't get along. Keep me in a state of agony. Baby, man, I'm asking me. And whatever you do to me, don't set me free.
The triumph of his existence, reaching the stars the way he did, perfect illustration of the human capacity to break through. He wasn't alone in the sense that he reached everybody.
I say no, 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 don't set me free. No, 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 no. I say no, no, don't set me free. No, 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 no. I say no, no, no,
But one thing I think we have to remember is this guy had a hell of a good time. He loved to laugh. He loved to He loved to make music. He loved to live.
Ray took a year off from the road to get professional help kicking his heroin habit.
I was an inpatient at McLean Hospital, and Ray was checked in as part of a court-ordered protocol. Really surreal to have Ray Charles visit. You know, it's like Frida Kahlo walking into a bar in Edinburgh or something, you know.
Ray's comeback album, Crying Time, found its way to the charts with a hit single.
Let's go get stoned.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go get stoned.
Let's go get stoned. That was just positively subversive when I heard that, you know, and it wasn't like anybody didn't know what it meant to go get stoned. I mean, that was very explicit.
America was in love with the story that he had conquered drugs. America wanted to cling to that story. But the other addictions of his life, which were women and the road and gin and pot, he continued.
For Ray Charles to be able to express that and not hide that was powerful in itself. You're a saint, you're a sinner too, because nobody's perfect.
I think everybody identifies with a little bit of rebellion. If they haven't done it themselves, then they probably vicariously did it through somebody like Ray.
You know I worked so hard.
Those of us who just sort of look in would probably say, gosh, isn't it a shame he wasn't closer with his kids? Or wasn't it a shame his, marriage didn't work out better? Or wasn't it a shame he had 17 years of heroin? And Ray would tell you, it's cool that I kicked heroin and didn't go back to it for the last 30-some years of my life. It's how you look at things.
Whoever said music soothes the savage beast really knew what they were talking about.
Ray Charles believed that politics had nothing to do with his art or his business. Yet the more famous he became, his every deed took on new social meaning.
You know, some people are tree shakers and some people are jelly makers.
Ray Charles didn't look at the political aspect of what he was doing. He looked at spreading a feeling.
I've always done portraits and apply text to the image. Words say so much more about a person's identity than somebody's physical appearance. I believe to my soul. To me, it really gets at the essence of Ray Charles. He did very deep things in terms of speaking to, our passion and our pain, everything like that through his music. People gravitated for that, gravitated towards, the realness of his music.
Reminds me of my Georgia. Oh, Georgia. The whole day through, this whole sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
When he did Georgia, that's the song that I would go, that definitely affected people. Because he's singing the praises of a state that's associated with a lot of violence toward black people.
But, you know, we also did California, Here I Come. We also did Moonlight in Vermont.
Yeah, but in Vermont and in California, police dogs weren't biting black people who were asking for their rights.
God help me. I think I try to be an entertainer. I do not try to tell nobody what their political influence ought to be.
He wasn't a preacher. He wasn't a preacher, you know. And the sociology down there was such that it wasn't a welcome place for him to be because it was so racist, you know.
Georgia, it's political because it's claiming a space in a state that has such a racist history as Georgia. He's recontextualizing it and making it his own. And that song became undeniable. They could not deny the majesty of that performance.
Oh, hear me now, other arms reach out to me, yeah. Other eyes smile tenderly, yeah, baby, girl, don't you know, still in the peaceful dreams of, oh, now see out on the road, the road leads back to you.
When they got the picture in Georgia, he was embraced, and that song was named the state song.
He's one of those artists that, you know, got criticized a lot in the late 60s and early 70s when black militancy came in because he wasn't strident.
Ray Charles can help. Every black performer can help. You don't have to get off the stage, but remember that your stage days are coming to a close. Remember that your song singing and your dancing days, your horn blowing days, they're coming to a close because when the black man is hungry, naked, and out of doors, you can't sing for him.
When we save our world, which requires saving, music will have opened the door. And the politics and the policies and the politicians will follow.
Ray Charles refused to allow the political laws to limit his art.
You got to stay free to sound free.
Georgia, on my mind, Lord. Wait a minute.
He was always aware of the struggles of people for all the reasons, you know, race, money, whatever. His politics was one of hard work.
It's kind of a Lionel Hampton kind of Republican, you know. I did it myself, let others do it themselves. He's a pretty conservative guy.
He was very private about that. He felt that no entertainer who sings for everybody should be using their fame and popularity to try to influence people one way or another.
The fact that he would appear at a Republican president's bash one day and then a Democrat the next.
He met 7 presidents.
And with, you know, complete freedom.
I heard that story about him playing for the Republican National Convention. Everybody said, oh, Ray's a Republican and all this, boo-hoo. And I liked what he said because he said, listen, he said, the Democrats wanted me to play for them too, but they couldn't come up with the money.
He wanted to get paid, you know, and his attitude was, don't tell me where I can play and where I can't play.
I really do appreciate and applaud anybody who can keep their sort of political dealings close to the vest. There's a lot to learn from that as well. By what Ray accomplished in his music, what more did Ray really need to say politically?
Really in now, but do you feel you're being left behind in a certain sense?
No. I know it's impossible. I won't let myself get left behind. No, it's nowhere I can be left behind because I know exactly what's going on.
What are you into now, then?
Well, I'm into, well, I don't know what to tell you I'm into. I'm into what I've always been into, and that is just singing and playing what I actually feel. I've been doing that for 25 years, and I don't plan on stopping it now.
Ray's control over his universe was one of his best assets, but as it grew with his wealth, it verged upon becoming too much of a good thing.
He was one of those guys who really understood money and the power of money and how to use it to have more autonomy.
You compare him to the other cats who come out of his era, nobody had the kind of money Ray did. He had a fortune.
And I ain't got nothing yet.
Name someone that you know that would never do what they didn't want to do.
All I seem to do is stay in debt.
Now, Joe Adams, Ray Charles' manager, helped Ray to accomplish his goal.
This notion of earning and show business and accumulating assets complemented Ray.
He's a tough businessman. There's nothing he likes better than to beat you in a deal. He likes to win.
And so he made sure he got the deal he wanted, to the point where when he left ABC, he had complete control of his own masters.
I said, look, since I'm producing my own music, I want to own my own masters. And they all said the same shit. We ain't never did nothing like that. So I said, well, I understand that, Mr. Cloud, but that's what I would like. And from that day until this day, anytime I do any music, I own the master too.
And I ain't got nothing yet.
Ray was groundbreaking in that front, too. Ray took care of Ray and got it right and opened the doors for new models in the record business, him owning his own masters, him sort of taking control of his destiny that way.
The thing that would have destroyed his peace if you didn't have his money ready.
If you expect me to go on stage, you'll pay me my money before the show. He didn't play.
He could bite, too. He could bite ferociously.
Before you can get something.
Everything that Ray wanted, he bought. He never leased, he never rented. It had to be his. End of discussion.
That's why they'll call the smartest.
He would just be his own supplier, whether it was a dry cleaner or, you know, when he was flying commercial in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, he bought his own travel agency.
He had a reputation as a tightwad. They'd say he had the first dollar he ever made.
I can't seem to get a nickel.
Kept his expenses down. But if he wanted something, especially something that was interrupting his lifestyle, he'd pay for it.
How do you get your first and still?
He bought his own airplane when they made him take his shoes off in airport security. And he didn't want to take his shoes off, so he bought a plane.
That's why they'll call
I think Ray Charles knew very well his stature in the business, and he knew of his strengths. I don't know that he ever thought of any weaknesses.
I tell y'all, I ain't found nothing yet. You know, I just don't understand it. I can't seem to get a nickel or a dime for a cup of coffee. I need a hamburger.
He had these huge hits. He revolutionized American music. And then it stopped. His innovation stopped.
Here's this man who is one of the greats of all time, who set the foundation for much of the music we were enjoying in the 60s and 70s. And he was on the charts. He wasn't on the radar. He was being kind of left behind. That's where Ray Charles was, left behind.
I sing the blues. You think I'm...
All the great innovators in pop music create something. Then they're imitated. And then at some point, there's so many imitators that the original gets obscured. It happened to Stevie Wonder. It happened to Prince. It happens to everybody, actually, at some point.
There are peaks and valleys to all careers. You cannot stay on top forever, consistently.
But please don't think I'm dirty. Yeah, you're so clean.
In R&B and in pop, the groove moves on. What was hip yesterday ain't hip today. Ray, to a large degree, wasn't too interested in these changes.
Someone with the level of and depth of talent that Ray had was pretty egotistical in some ways, you know?
Ray was angry and proud, and he defended himself and his sound and his originality and his innovation quite proudly. I just remember him writhing on the couch in his hotel room as he expressed his feelings about trendier, younger, whiter pop stars passed him by.
And probably what made it difficult to accept sometimes was to watch those artists when they would see Ray Charles and how they held him in such reverence.
It eats away at you, you know? I know that it did at him on a certain level.
I declare you think you're so wise now. Hey, hey, hey.
Times change, and it is a challenge that everyone creative has to break through.
Where other artists would team up with other producers or try out different producers or try out different arrangers, switch labels, whatever it took. But that just wasn't Ray's nature. Sure, he wanted that, but not at the expense of giving up his independence.
Give it all you got. And so what if it's not a hit? But you know the music is good.
It didn't matter whether he had a hit record or not, and once he had reached this eminence, a permanent star, and what I call record proof.
He can play Vegas, he can play all these different places. People will pay good money to see a legend. Ray was a personality.
You know when it's right. You know when you feel it, baby. You hold it, you hear it, you taste it, it's right. You got the right one, baby.
He liked that. I mean, he liked doing commercials for state lotteries and getting 100,000 here, 50,000 there. You know, he enjoyed that. He enjoyed, you know, doing a slot machine. Those were untapped revenue sources for Ray Charles, and he was all about new money.
It's like he has to go work to make a living. Give me a break, but it gets in your blood.
When it's right.
Playing a fun character on a sitcom, probably the only thing that he hadn't done before.
People are ready to pull the sellout card real quick when you do that kind of thing. And that's yet another boundary that he broke and broke through.
He had created an imprint of himself as the self-sufficient, tough, independent person. And so, if this guy says it's all right, then it's all right.
You got the right one, baby.
There's a point at which Ray went from being a black pop star to being this other thing, who's like an official black figure. It's an amazing transformation that he made from being a hit maker to rise up and become the official voice of the country.
For someone born into the fringes of society who followed his own path, the lessons of his life found their way into the heart of America.
I have a very hands-on classroom, and so my latest venture has been incorporating Ray Charles music.
Ray fearlessly helped move a nation to a place where there was greater tolerance.
The one love mentality, you know, of like, man, I could look at you, any nationality, any age, any sexual preference, and really still see the oneness in it, no matter if I don't believe exactly what you believe or not.
He's the voice of the people. And you know why I say that? Ray Charles, in his career, he has at least one song that touches everybody that I've ever listened to him and loved him.
So when you look at, you know, what it means to be an American, what it means to achieve the American dream, I mean, how can we identify with Ray Charles then in both of those? Yes.
It's conventional wisdom that the American dream is just growing up, getting a job, having a nice house, having kids or a nice husband or wife, when in reality it's more about what you want to do as a person, not just what everyone else wants you to do.
Joe Raposo wrote a beautiful song that says all this, sung for us now by Ray Charles.
It's not that easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves. When I think it could be so much nicer being red, yellow, or gold, or something much more colorful like that.
Ray's in a hotel room or whatever, and PBS was on television, and he hears Kermit the Frog sing Being Green. He said, that's a beautiful song. Who's singing that song? The guy said, it's a little green frog singing this song. It's a puppet. He said, I don't care. Listen to the word. That's a beautiful song. Ray records it. Yet, of course, the Muppets and Jim Henson call him up, and they have him perform it on Sesame Street, and it's just incredible. And there's this group of 6 and 7 and 8-year-old kids that love Ray Charles.
He could take what might be considered an insipid song and take control of it.
When I think it could be so much nicer being red, yellow, or gold, or something much more colorful like that. No, it's not that easy.
That was a good lesson to learn from him, that there's something everywhere, you know, every genre of music, every style has something to offer.
Whatever you are doing musically, the public can sense when you're really sincere. As long as you're honest, as long as you're not trying to fake the public out.
And once he does a song, it's his. And that's a good quality to have. He makes everything his own.
Because it wasn't about him expressing himself through a song he wrote, he was expressing himself through any song that he touched.
But rain, the color of spring, green can be cool and friendly like that.
You look at the lyrics to that song, and Ray could be saying it's not easy being green, but he could be saying it's not easy being poor, it's not easy being black, it's not easy being a heroin addict, it's not easy being blind, but you gotta accept who you are.
And it'll do fine, 'cause it's beautiful. And I think it's what I wanna be.
Ray was constantly surprising, and just when you think you hadn't heard it for a while, he'll do America, and it becomes a patriotic symbol. He's just, that's an icon.
He asked me to write this arrangement on America the Beautiful, you know, which is like a classic now.
Amber waves of grain, far purple mountain and majesties.
America the Beautiful rendition by Charles is, for me, very special, apart from just the beautiful way that he sang it and the inflections he put into it. But the sincerity that came across in a country that still offers an awful lot of hurdles that are so tough to get over. But there was a genuine affection that came through in that song and his rendering of it, that the promise was there and that the dream was there.
When I was in school, you know, we used to sing something like this. America, sweet America. You know, God shed his words on me.
The American dream
is waking up every morning feeling that you matter. As somebody who has absolute freedom to see the world the way you see it, that's the American dream.
He was an inspiration for anybody else to come live this dream, to come fight through whatever the obstacles are and get to be something.
Because I think there's a certain kind of identification with overcoming struggle that Americans identify with. We love that as Americans. We love the sense of the underdog rising up.
He's something that I'm proud of as an American, and I think most Americans are proud of.
Sometimes you don't see how big of a change is being made while the change is happening. You don't think of someone who is black and in the public eye as change. But if you go back 100 years, it wouldn't have been the case.
Being a patriot and a rebel is about coming from situations that may be difficult and turning that into a possibility and turning that into a reality.
Ray Charles loved America because he said this is the only country that you could do what he did and be called the genius.
As you can hear, there's a pretty finished track. Ray's done this string arrangement, big band arrangement. I think he did this in his show, so it was a pretty well-developed song, and he just came and did a studio version, it would seem, one day. And it's a killer track.
The fire that burns deep down in me.
Ray's Foundation gave us the rights to work with his catalog, so we started coming across all kinds of unreleased materials. So what we're doing today is we're kind of going through some of it, just listening, picking out the gems, the really amazing unheard Ray that we plan to give people a chance to hear sometime soon.
You know what? It's hard to believe, but it hurts to be in love, and I ain't lying either. All right, y'all, do it. Get it. Huh. Look out, y'all.
At a certain point, you have what I call the next plateau of career. There's all the awards, and isn't he Lifetime Achievement Person of the this?
It got to the point he received so many awards, so he didn't want to go and receive them himself. And I remember having a conversation with him. You want to receive your flowers while you can still smell them.
Good guy. Look out, y'all.
Ray lived to the last second. That's why when he called me and told me that he had come off the road.
And that's when it really started manifesting himself that something was wrong.
Ray knew, because he heard that cancer word.
And that's when he started calling me on the phone about these arrangements to go on this Genius Loves Company album.
We went to him with the idea of, not really a new idea, but something that we thought would work particularly well for Ray, which is a duets record. He leaned back in his chair and he kind of shook his head back and forth, and then finally he said, all right, let's do it. But we're done for today. Now go on, get out of here.
When I was 21, it was a very good year.
Ray's final record embodied the musical world that he helped create. It would become the best-selling album of his career.
Ray's whole career was that, crossing all the genres. Genius Loves Company, it makes the point altogether in one great piece of work.
And I noticed he started selecting songs that were more pointed about life and mortality. A very good year.
But now the days grow short. I'm in the autumn of my years.
And he told me, he said, if he couldn't come in and sing and do what he enjoyed, that he would no longer be here.
They were wrapping up the movie at the same time.
From the brim.
We talked about, make sure my movie gets out, make sure my album gets out, you know.
When we did those sessions, he could do about a half hour at a time. He was obviously struggling, and yet it was still there.
If you listen to the album in the order of the tracks that were recorded, you can literally hear he was dying. I mean, you could literally hear that he was getting weaker and weaker.
But I think he was afraid to die. You know, I think he got close to God at the end. I know that he did. And Mabel helped a lot.
I had been trying to save him for 40 years. I wanted him to feel the kind of peace that I know he should feel.
He was very vulnerable. He didn't have his glasses on, and you could kind of see what he looked like as a little boy. He was very sweet and gentle, and he told me that there were certain things he wanted to add to the book. He said, tell the cats I'm sorry. All the musicians I argued with, tell them that I admire them, that I love them, and that I understand their value.
He planned before his death that his estate would go to his foundation, and that foundation was created to help people with hearing disabilities and education for underprivileged children.
I talked to Ray, and I knew that he was dying. I wanted to, you know how you say, you know, so like, I'll see you later. And he said, well, of course you will, but I think maybe we'll be even on this side of the dirt. And he laughed.
The very last thing he ever sang was Elton John's song, Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word.
What have I gotta do to make you love me? Huh? What have I got to do to make you care?
And it was the last song that was ever mixed using this board. These faders are taped in the exact same place that Mr. Charles taped them in back in 2004.
And I wake up and find...
Sing the first verse, you sing the second. I'll sing the bridge, or whatever you call that.
And that's kind of a fitting, you know, if you're looking at your mortality and you're making a record and you're making a statement, which is, this was Ray's vehicle to speak anyway, it was music.
What do I do when lightning strikes me?
But he was meticulous about his own performance. It's incredibly impressive to be with someone who has music has been his whole life.
Sad, so sad, it's a sad, sad situation.
And he's singing, it's sad, it's sad, it's a sad, sad situation. I've got a lump in my throat. People in the control booth are crying.
And then I lost it, I mean, right there. And then Evelyn came over and I said, this is it, isn't it?
What do I do when lightning strikes me? What have I gotta do?
Ray got up and said, man, I've been sick, I don't know where that came from. And then he left, and we never got him to sing again.
Oh, you give your hand to me, and you say hello, and I can hardly speak. My heart is beating so, and anyone can tell. You think you know me well, but you don't know me.
In so many ways, Ray Charles' story is not over yet because he keeps on singing. He left with us a library, a legacy, a document that lives.
Kiss your lips and longs to hold you tight. To you, I'm
The most profound things are not things you can touch. They were things that just become a part of you. He left a profound, indelible mark.
He's the first musician to have a memorial library. Generally, you only have presidents, U.S. presidents, that have memorial libraries.
The idea that you can become so beloved by not being what everyone says you should be. That's a good lesson to people. The more you conform, the less likely you are to be really interesting.
We don't want our young people to lose sight on who he was and who he yet is in the minds of people.
Oh, you never know.